Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is my pleasure to rise today and share with you some perspectives on Bill 5, the Public Sector Employers Amendment Act, which, surprise, I'm not a fan. So the main reason why I'm not really a fan of this bill, Mr. Speaker, is that it doesn't actually do anything to address the priorities of people in my riding. I've had many conversations with many constituents over the last few months since being elected as their MLA, and nobody has said to me they really wish that the president of a board or a commission was making more money. Rather, what my constituents are sharing with me is that they wish that they were making more money or that they were spending a little less of it. Utilities are too high, I hear. Rent is too high. Housing is unaffordable. It's expensive to drive a car because gas is so expensive. And what this bill does is it just makes the rich richer. By creating a bill that removes all salary restraints for Alberta's boards and commissions, we're actually opening the door for a massive and shameful misuse of taxpayer money. And that is problematic because the members opposite like to position themselves as fiscally responsible and fiscally conservative, but this bill does not do that. Rather, this bill allocates taxpayer dollars for people who are making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to be making much more money. But what I care about is the people working and living in Banff-Kananaskis who are making minimum wage and who are single parents making minimum wage and trying to cope with rising rent or an impossible reality of being able to purchase their first home as a young family. That's what I care about. And this bill doesn't do anything about that. So while Albertans in Banff-Kananaskis are struggling to pay rent and buy food, this government wants us to spend time talking about paying some of the highest paid executives in Alberta need to be paid a little bit more. What a waste of time. It's really unfortunate to me because it's just another example of how this government is not actually focused on the priorities of the Albertans that we have all been elected to represent in this House. And that is why we are calling this bill the Gravy Train Part 1, because it really is just about creating a UCP gravy train for the rich to get richer. Choo-choo. So the other thing that this act does is it sets the stage for unbalanced collective bargaining, and the ministerial appointed employer associations will collective bargain on behalf of all employers. Once we start messing with collective bargaining, we reduce the ability of unions to function the way that they were meant to function. And so just to remind folks, unions are created to protect employees' rights, salaries, time for vacation, etc. So if we go way back in time, there's a reason why unions were created in the first place. And that was because labor conditions during the Industrial Revolution were not appropriate for people, and people got sick and they died and they hurt themselves. And unions were created to protect employees from unsafe and unfair working conditions. Unions are the reasons why we have weekends, they're the reasons why we have paid vacation time, and they're the reasons why we are afforded so much of the luxuries or advantages that we have in our current work structure. You start to mess with collective bargaining, and you start to weaken the power of unions to do their jobs. And I think that is where this bill also falls short and is a big disappointment for me. I am a person who has benefited from being a member of the union. I used to work in the Alberta Public Service, and I was thankful that that union existed for me. My husband works in construction and is a proud member of his union and always advocates for the strengthening of his union. I would definitely not be able to go home and look him in the eye if I didn't stand up and oppose this bill that tries to mess with collective bargaining, which is the foundation of why unions exist and how they help us. The other thing is that this act does nothing right now. So while the rest of the province is struggling with affordability today, putting food on the table today, paying electric bills today, this act does nothing to address what is actually important to Albertans today. It doesn't help with attracting or retaining people to live and work in our province, as the current compensation structure will remain in place, maybe for years, depending on how long the future directives and subsequent frameworks take to develop. So people are in crisis today, and we're standing here talking about a bill to make the rich richer and also to just not really do anything about anything for the next few years. I'm pretty sure that that's not why anybody elected us to be in this House. The other thing is that all of the guidelines in this bill all of the guidelines will be in the hands of the minister. No legislation will be binding on employers or employer committees, councils, or associations. And I don't know about you, Mr. Speaker, but I get very nervous anytime all of the power is in the hands of a minister. And I'll tell you, it's because nobody gets to be minister forever, right? And so even if you have a well-intending minister trying to do good things, it doesn't mean that that minister will always have the power. And so whenever we create a bill that puts too much power in the hands of the minister, we have to recognize that the ministers change over the years. And so their individual intentions may also change. A compensation plan, there is a compensation plan section in the bill which may require employers, employer committees, or employer associations to submit compensation plans to the minister for approval based on the directives. That's the part around collective bargaining that gets a little bit problematic. These employer committees can be created by the minister, but collective bargaining units are a voice for employees to have in the deal and the negotiations that they make. And so it's changing something that's supposed to be bottom up into top down. And that's where I think we run into problems. But, you know, mostly what I think is really problematic about this bill is that it doesn't address what is important in our ridings and what we're hearing from Albertans today. Nobody in my riding has said they want presidents of boards and commissions to get paid more. Nobody in my riding has said they wish there was more boards and commissions. Members opposite are big fans of creating a lot more boards and commissions and, I don't know, a whole bunch of groups of UCP appointed people to make decisions. Nobody in Alberta is asking for this. Again, we're debating a bill that nobody in Alberta has asked for. And that is problematic for me. Not because it's not like Albertans aren't asking for anything. Albertans are asking for housing, and they're asking for help with food. They're asking for rent supplements. They're asking for more affordable housing to be built. They're asking for children to be kept safe. They're asking for a better public education system that serves students. Members in my riding also are asking for support with tourism-related infrastructure. We're a riding filled with small municipalities that serve millions of people every single year, and yet we don't have the provincial support we need to build better water treatment plants, better sewage treatment plants, roads, sidewalks, multi-use pathway systems, or public transportation. But hey, let's not address any of those things. Let's just spend our time talking about how we can pay presidents of boards and commissions more. That feels like a really good use of our time. So obviously it's not, that was me being sarcastic, just to be clear. I just want to make that clear. I wasn't being serious about that. There are some amendments that I think are critical to this bill if we're going to see it move forward. And one is to add back in the importance of collective bargaining into the bill preamble. That is critical to ensure the proper functioning of unions and ensuring that employees are represented and that their needs are represented in unions. We also need to add in public reporting on directives and compensation plans. That's critical. And we need to require that ministerial appointments are confirmed by the Assembly. No offense, but I don't trust a single minister on the opposite side of the House, and I know that a lot of people in my riding don't too. So if we're going to have ministerial appointments for any kind of committee, it should be approved by this Assembly as a whole. Let's remember that none of us in this House were voted with 100% of the voters in our riding, which means that we all have a responsibility to represent everybody in our riding, and we all have a responsibility to represent the people who also didn't vote for us, because that's our job as MLAs. The reason why we have a government and a party in opposition is so that we can have a fulsome conversation where all Albertans feel represented in that conversation. We need to be able to do that freely, and we need to be able to do that to address ministerial appointments on these random committees that are going to be created. We also need to remove exemptions from accountability legislation. If we're going to have legislation, let's make sure that it's effective and that it doesn't contain a whole array of exemptions from accountability. Thank you.